Warning.
Watch very closely now. 3, 2, 1. Bzow! Check that out.
The following podcast features terrible jokes.
You know you can use Hot Wheels cars when you need to make a saving throw in D&D? Every car is die-cast.
Usually about board games.
We want the fun. Gotta have that fun.
Must insist that no one attempt to recreate any joke performed on this podcast.
We had less technical issues than $1 million company.
All right!
This is Boards and Swords.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Boards and Swords. This is a podcast, in case you weren't sure, you were curious, you stumbled upon us. But this is a podcast where we feature bad jokes, good folks, and some tabletop gaming as well. I'm one of your hosts. My name's Chris Renshaw, and I'm going to throw it to the triple view here. Down in the bottom corner, we have my partner in crime, Mr. Philip Herbig. How's it going?
What's going on, everybody?
Returning from the grave. I mean, dinner.
From plotting our latest escapade.
And then special guest with us, we have Kevin from the Renegade Game Studios, specifically from the RPG team over there. How's it going?
Pretty great.
So just quick summary of what do you do at Renegade? I already mentioned the RPG piece.
Mm-hmm. So I'm the producer for role-playing games at Renegade. That means I'm kind of the manager. I get to do all the like management stuff. I looked at my cats one day and I realized I was some sort of manager, and I'm in charge of all this stuff, and it's terrifying at times. Also, my job includes some, like, not just managing people, but dealing with all of the various projects that we have. Lots of role-playing books and accessories. Some also kind of, some companies have a line or brand manager for everything, and I'm basically the one who gets to deal with all the licensors, putting our pitches together, and planning out what goes into the entire line for each of our currently 8 role-playing games.
Whoa.
It's a lot.
Oh, yeah, especially, like, it's enough because we were chatting pre-show. I mean, like, you've got the World of Darkness, which is its own, like, monolith in itself, and then you guys were just like, hey, let's make other games. Let's take on, like, the Hasbro-verse as well.
Oh, yeah. And then the weird thing is, like, My Little Pony is kind of the closest one to Vampire, because the tone is very different, but, like, doing, like, the lack of violence is in a role-playing game is kind of the thing sometimes. Sometimes Vampire can get pretty violent too, but, there's a lot of talking, a lot of interaction, investigation, that sort of stuff.
Okay,
All right.
I totally want to port some of the My Little Pony characters over to Vampire.
I mean...
You act like that's probably not already done.
Yeah.
That's like, I had somebody comment on, this was like a video I did years ago talking about the Star Trek Adventures RPG, and somebody was like, imagine what if they did Star Trek but with Cthulhu. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that probably, like, that I was like, this has to exist, right? Like, somebody's done this. Like, in that kind of species, was it 8674 or whatever?
8742?
That one. The Voyager people.
I wouldn't necessarily say Cthulhu.
Okay, I was going for, like, kind of a cosmic horror vibe.
They were odd.
They were
I'll give them that. They
peculiar. All right, but we're going to get back to talking about some Renegade stuff. But first, we have some news.
News!
All right, first things first. I once did a report that had a bunch of graphs of hatchet manufacturing over the years. I ended up getting a bad grade because I didn't label my axes. So, this ended up working out because for our first story is about Renegade Games here, and talking about how the first new Axis and Allies game in a decade is up for pre-order right now, and that is the Axis and Allies North Africa edition. titled Axis and Allies North Africa, has hit pre-order and is set to release for August 2024, aka Gen Con. This was picked as the new game via a community vote last year, and they wrote the following after the corroboration in the introduction to the rulebook. Right after the vote was in, Renegade asked me if I wanted to design this game alone or with their in-house designer, Matt Hyra. I decided to be his design consultant, doing some of the basics like map and other fun stuff, while Matt did the heavy lifting. In this intricate dance of design, Matt took the lead role. His dedication, professionalism, profound knowledge of the topic, and long-standing love for Axis and Allies quickly won my confidence. So, man, you know, like, I remember I think it was the Renegade presentation at Gen Con where they were just talking about, like, there is, like, a community around, like, Axis and Allies, just, like, that is like a whole thing in and of itself. You know, like there's people that just all day, like the way I play 40K, those people play Axis and Allies.
Oh, jeez.
That's the part that gets relatable.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But I have to say that I don't know what it is, probably just the North Africa part. Anytime I see, or every time I keep looking at this game and looking at this news story, all I can think about is that board game campaign for North Africa that was like the takes 30 days to play or whatever.
Oh, Lord.
It was the one that was in like the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can really think about. And I'm like, is there a campaign in it? Yeah, so explores the storied North African front of World War II, where brash General George S. Patton faced off against the Desert Fox General Erwin Rommel in tank warfare. Contains 2 scenarios to play through, over 250 plastic miniatures. So, yeah, basically my dad would love this game.
That's pretty good for that retail price.
Yeah, did they say the retail? Oh, yeah, $130, which
Where'd you see?
at the bottom.
Oh, no, that's Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition.
Oh, okay, $90. Sorry,
Yeah.
$90.
$90 for 250 miniatures?
Yeah, I imagine for Axis and Allies fans, that's probably steep. I don't know how much the regular game goes for, but I mean, yeah, with 250 plastic miniatures, that's
Also, how big are the miniatures? That's my other one.
Oh, yeah, fair.
Are they like Risk miniatures where they're like the biggest one is the size of a dime?
Yeah. I was trying to see if they had pictures, if they had, but not in this article. I'd have to go to the actual probably page and look at it. All right, but so yeah, if
I
you
feel like I should have answers for you, but
that's the other people. You know,
Yeah.
they don't work
It's not
with
my department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They build the miniatures. We just write the games. All right. So moving on. Back in high school, we had this guy that pawned off all the band instruments. I don't remember the details, but he definitely got his brass kicked. So right now, the #1 game on Board Game Geek is Brass Birmingham. And Philip, did you play? I know I played it with Corey and Jimmy. I don't know if you were there. Does this board look familiar?
It does not look familiar
Okay.
at all.
I didn't think so, but I thought there was a possibility. But
It's got weird vibes of what's that game I bought with the dials and the turning?
Yes. Her Majesty's Secret Service. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Well, it's set in that it's not like steampunk like that, but it is set kind of in that time period, like that Industrial Revolution kind of era. But so yeah, right now it's the #1 game. It dethroned Gloomhaven as the #1 game on BGG, and of course, when you've got something hit like that, everyone wants to know when's the sequel. Which is funny because Birmingham is a sequel to the original Brass. But Brass Birmingham designer says next sequel is aiming for Kickstarter in late 2024. So a Kickstarter this year. Fans of Smog and Meeples rejoice. The minds behind the industrialism-minded Brass board game series say their next entry should hit Kickstarter later this year. Brass
So,
Birmingham
yeah.
released in 2018, which is itself as a sequel to the board game Brass, which was later Brass Lancashire. This title boasted more complex interaction and expanded its focus from cotton production to the wider industrialization of the UK during the 18th and 19th century. So it was kind of like it was a hit immediately, but it just kind of slowly kept building up steam over time, and then eventually dethroning Gloomhaven. I purposely didn't mean to make a train reference there of building up steam. So understandably, demand for another Brass game has simmered at a low boil for a while, and antsy fans sometimes take to forums to ask. One of the Roxley developers, day to answer one of these queries with a small update. We're not ready to quite share it yet, but our next Brass sequel is our current top priority for development in 2024. It's slated to be our next Kickstarter Q4 this year. The exact launch date will depend on development and testing. Thanks for your patience. So, yeah. Q4 2024. That Kickstarter is going to do gangbusters. It's going to be huge.
Everyone's Christmas money from grandma is going straight to that.
Pretty much. Or the money that the money that they were going to give to grandma for Christmas is going to that if it's beforehand.
There we go.
All right. Moving on. Looks like Funko has had enough board games and decided to pop off. So, Prospero Hall got sold. So, Funko Games, the people that make your Pop Vinyl figures, Funko, they had a branch of their company called Funko Games. That was basically a group known as Prospero Hall that made like things like the Funkoverse stuff. They made like the Back to the Future game, Jaws, Pan Am. I'm looking through the titles here. But they also made things like there's the one of their most popular ones was probably the Disney games that was Villainous. So they had like the Villainous and then like the Disney Villainous and the Star Wars and Marvel Villainous games. But
So Disney.
yes, that's why it was like the Disney Villainous games, but they also did a Star Wars. Yeah, exactly. But they've decided now that they're not gonna. They're kind of done, which I mean makes sense because I've been seeing a lot of articles over the past couple of years talking about how they are not making money. So allegedly, though, none of I'm skipping ahead to there, but the left the tabletop industry by selling the licenses and distribution rights to its board game portfolio to Dutch family-weight game publisher Goliath Games for an undisclosed amount of money. $1.
What was the last bid?
Yeah, but
One?
one of the things that people are talking about is in the press release, the one thing they don't say is that the designers aren't in a part of that deal. So none of Prospero Hall's staff were included in the offloading of licenses and assets to Goliath. They accepted an initial payment for the sale and received future minimum guaranteed royalty payments from Goliath for the use of Funko's brand because I believe they're still going to put out like Funkoverse type stuff. So there's IP still there. It mentions existing inventory and intellectual property, but fails to mention Prospero Hall's roughly 20 employees. This article notes, unless they're somehow called acquired assets. But yeah, this is the story as I was talking about. Funko weathered a tough year in 2023 by laying off around 200 employees. They replaced their former CEO, and they've struggled to report profits. While Board Games was the only division to post profit during several quarters, which is kind of weird that it's like your only profitable thing, and we're gonna sell it off. The transaction is designed to keep with our previously stated goals of streamlining our business by focusing on our core assets. Somebody's like, you're doing too much, you got to downsize. And they're like, we really like our figures. And they're like, you're not really selling any of them. But we really like our figures. So we'll just sell off the part that's making money.
There you go. That works.
Whatever floats your boat or sinks it.
Invest more in that wall of figures at your local Hot Topic.
That's what they want you to think.
Exactly.
All right. Hey, Philip, you remember the three wise men in the Christmas story?
it's a vague recollection. Yeah.
Well, it turns out one of them died shortly after. It was a real murder. So, Thames Kosmos unveils a new game series called Masters of Crime. So, Kosmos is people, they're really popular recently, especially in kind of the puzzle space for the Exit series of games, those escape room type puzzles of games. Well, they've now got a new line of sleuthing games called Masters of Crime, a new line of games that'll hit retail in 2024. It features story-driven games that are a unique twist on murder mystery games. 1 to 5 players will delve in authentic feeling evidence, unearth clues, and complete puzzles to solve or execute different crimes. It integrates real-world sleuthing resources such as Google Maps, phone numbers, websites, and more. Each game in the line has multiple outcomes. Oh, that's actually really nice. So it's not just a one-and-done thing. Sounds like sounds kind of like the choose your own adventure book. We're like, well, I'm gonna go back and start that again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm gonna choose a different thing this time. So there's gonna be 4 versions. You got Vendetta, where summoned by a godfather of the NYC Mafia to investigate whether there's a traitor. Shadows, which is Amsterdam for a heist at the Bachman Gallery. Rapture is a scandal targeting international superstar Diana threatens to expose the player's drug ring, and Incognito. The players assume the roles of FBI agents that go undercover as dangerous criminals. So each of these will be 2 to 4 hours in retail for $24.95. So a little bit higher than those Exit games, but it looks like you're getting a lot more out of each.
Yeah, you're getting the replayability there. So
Yeah, and each one seems a little bit meatier because like those Exit games are typically designed for kind of like an hour-ish type of thing, whereas this is saying playing in 2 to 4 hours. So that's actually kind of cool. This is kind of neat. But
summoned by the Godfather. Come to me. Damn, my daughter's wedding.
All right, this last story here is just to Chick-fil-a out our news section. Yeah, that Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is looking for someone to help make board games. I feel like this news story would make more sense if it was like 4 years ago when Wendy's was making that RPG.
Yeah, that would.
That's like immediately kind of what came to mind when I saw this.
So like I read go ahead. I'll talk at the end.
Okay. So recent job listing also lists board and card games among the original games from Chick-fil-A. Whoever fills the seat of gaming producer within a U.S. fast food chain will be charged with overseeing day-to-day creative exploration, development, and production of console, mobile games, free-to-play games, or other digital activities, as well as analog games, including board games, card games, and other family and group activities. So, Philip, you want a job? Just need to make.
So the thing is, I don't think there's anybody in chat right now.
Okay.
So, and I'm gonna need you to bleep this out on the recording version. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just make a mod of Doom over top, just like Chex did back in the 90s. Boom! That's one video game right there.
Oh
Already
man,
done.
that also this also Did any of y'all play the Burger King Xbox games that came out where they had like
King?
Sneak King?
I wanted.
I got it, and I played it. It was so creepy because like you're just the main screen comes up and then just the king rises up out of nowhere, and you're just like, huh. And then the whole thing is like you're supposed to like sneak up on people and like hand them cheeseburgers.
I mean, not that I would initially be upset, like, where'd you cut? Thanks for the burger. Cool.
I don't know. That sounds like a good way. It's like, what did you put in this burger?
That one too. What's wrong with it?
Yeah, what's wrong with this burger? Yeah. Oh, look, I just happened to look down and say hey, this article even mentions the Wendy's RPG Feast of Legends.
Okay, we gotta hang on. We're gonna.
What's up?
I'm gonna see if there's a PDF copy of that Wendy's RPG.
Oh, I have it.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah, I have it.
I
Are
was
you
gonna say,
kidding
I
me?
have it too.
Are you kidding me? That was an instant download. It's like, I'm saving this just for prosperity's sake. Just, 10, 20 years from now, I can be like, hey, you guys remember that Wendy's RPG? Who wants
No,
to
Grandpa Chris, what are you talking about?
Who wants to play it? Well, that was also half the thing, because that was right in the middle of when we were doing the Dirtbags of Holding, and a part of me was like, should we run this?
Yes.
Like, is that too capitalist of me?
Okay, we need
to
to
be
get
easily
the band
swayed?
back together. Get the band back together and do that. That's what we gotta do.
All right, that's all the news we got this time. So before Philip goes into talking about the Patreon, I just want to remind everybody that they need to check out Discord or boardsandswords.com/Discord and check out the cool things there and hang out with us and talk and share what you're playing right now and what kind of things that you're into. A lot of the news stories that get posted in there end up working their way into our show notes, because I know what people want to hear about, because they're like, hey, this thing interests me. And I listen. And then, so Philip, yeah, Patreon. How's that? What is that? What is Patreon?
Patreon.com/boardsandswords, boardsandswords.com/Patreon. Either one of those links is going to get you where you need to go. You get to, first off, we just want to be very clear. You get access to the Discord channel. That's there, if I'm not mistaken, Chris with the longer beard at the moment. That's for free for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, the Discord itself. But
Discord itself, you can hop into the Discord channel, and we've got a lot going on there. People are talking about random stuff, showing off random minis. There's a cat picture channel.
Oh,
Chris.
yeah.
There's a cat picture channel, guys. Okay,
Yep.
It's just great. I don't know.
to be
know if we
fair,
have-
it's a pets picture channel. So
it's
we
pets.
have some
It's
people that
pets.
post their dogs as well.
Going on with them. Okay. Anyway, but if you want to get into, if you want to support the shenanigans that Chris and I get into and that we subject our guests to, then you're gonna want to. You can throw us $1 a month there, guys. That's gonna get you access to higher secret channels in the Discord. Super secret channels in the Discord. All right. And then for a little extra, you get the best worst dad jokes about your favorite games. All right. Chris has lists. I mean, that's what the man does. Okay. Dad jokes all over the place. Okay. Right. See what he's see. If you're watching this live, he's looking down at his phone. He's making dad jokes.
Yep.
For people's games. Higher tiers, we're sending out dice. Okay. We've got Boards and Swords branded D6s. They are weighted, and the Boards and Swords is the 1, so you're always gonna have these in dice jail. And then at the absolute best, we have the piece de resistance. If Chris will throw it up on the screen.
Oh, yeah. I knew I was forgetting something.
When we get to a tier, when we get to one of our goals, we're gonna get the band back together. and
Oh
we're gonna play
no!
through
The link doesn't exist anymore.
We're gonna play through Dungeon Crawls Classics. Oh no, teleport fumble. That
Yeah.
404 file not found. Anyway, I remember what it is. It is the
Love Mutants of
Castle
Castle
Heartache. Okay, it is going to be an amazing module. It's all about love and mutants
And heartache.
and heartache. All right, it's all there. It's got everything you're going to need. Once again, that's patreon.com/boardsandswords, boardsandswords.com/Patreon.
All right. Hey to Philip and Darren in the chat. Thanks for jumping in. You got here just in time because we're going to turn it back over to Kevin and talk about the World of Dark. Well, I had mentioned World of Darkness, but I mean, we're up
I mean,
for...
I can take My Little Pony questions, too.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, how long have you? So, you've only been. I was looking at it. You've probably been at Renegade for what, like 2, 3 years now. I was looking at some of the articles I
think
saw.
it's 2.5, yeah. So it hasn't been all that long. Enough to try to get a few put out there.
You're not the new guy anymore. Heck,
know,
in
what's
some
that
of the gaming
mean?
industry, you would be considered a veteran.
That is that's a little unfortunate for.
I just feels like as
I'm
someone that
in
reads
the
news,
street.
I just keep seeing like so and so's hired this people and that people. But how did you get to where you're at now? Like what? How did you get to going from just from making your own games as far as like writing your own RPG or writing RPG stories to then I'm writing the big thing. I'm helping manage the big time stories.
I used to have a very glamorous career as a some sort of brain scientist, but there were some personal things, some work things that wasn't working out, and I quit my job, moved back across the world because I was living in Abu Dhabi at the time, and I was looking for a couple fun things to do as I sort of figured out what to do with my life, and I got a ridiculous internship at Fantasy Flight Games.
Ooh.
And from there, I got a job in the production department at Asmodee, and that kind of jumped me up to somehow being in charge of World of Darkness and Hasbro RPGs at Renegade.
Well, there is a kind of a comment. I know there's a couple people that have moved from Fantasy Flight over to Renegade. Because back when I used to do demo games for Fantasy Flight, and Matt Holland used to be the events guy there, and now he's over at Renegade. So it was funny when I would get the emails for him for looking for like Gen Con volunteers, but it was for Renegade instead of Fantasy Flight.
Instead of Fantasy Flight.
Yeah. So, how? I mean, sorry, I'm spacing out all over the place here. It doesn't help that we got like people messaging spam stuff in the chat. That kind of threw me off. But focusing on World of Darkness specifically, did you have a history in the past with World of Darkness, or was that something new when you kind of came into the Renegade space?
So I've actually been like a World of Darkness fan for a long time. I may have run a vampire blood bar LARP out of my parents' basement in high school.
That seems appropriate for anyone that was a vampire fan.
Yeah. So I've been a fan of World of Darkness stuff for quite a while. Over the course of one's life, oftentimes you sort of come and go from a thing. But World of Darkness is one of the things there's a few books that I got rid of, but there's also a few books that I held on to since high school. So my bookshelf has some of my originals, like my old timey Book of Nod or my Time of Thin Blood book that I really liked for some reason. I guess it's because it's cool.
So okay, I'm gonna tangent already, and
Nice.
talk about the Book of Nod, because when I had originally reviewed some of the vampire books, that was something that kind of got sent to me. I got sent the original hardcover version of the Book of Nod. So would you consider that like the vampire Bible kind of?
I mean, yeah, or at least one version of it.
Right.
So that's the Renegade did a reprint of that. So it's basically almost word for word everything that's in the original. I know that there's like there's been a few different versions of that, and a couple typos got introduced in some of the intermediate printings, and we found them as I was working on this giant Book of Nod deluxe project.
Right.
So, like, I could look at my notes. I have a few places where we found some changes. When we reprint this Book of Nod, we'll have to update them, and we had to kind of address a little bit, like talk to Paradox, like this is the typo, right? Like we should fix this. So but it's basically a reprint of the original from the 90s with a few other changes. The art was we had to kind of reconstruct it, so the art, the exact placement of the text on the art might have moved a little bit. You might be able to see a slightly different, a little more to the art piece than the original. Or something else. Oh, we put a fancy ribbon bookmark in it.
Oh, of course, because every book needs a nice ribbon now. But like Philip, to explain, like this is a book that's in universe. Like they talk about the Book of Nod like in the game, and you can have like a copy of it, so that like say you wanted to reference, say like I've only played Vampire once, but just imagine if you had like a priest reading from the Book of Nod. You could have somebody open it up and read from it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, there's even a few sort of variants that got published over the years, so you can have some of your characters in your stories or whatnot be like, oh, well, that's not the version of the story I heard. This is what we believe. Actually, that's not quite how it happened.
You're using the wrong translation.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. We actually, when we had to add some of that into this big deluxe monstrosity of a version we made for that too, to give fans some of the opportunities to do things like that.
Yeah, we've been we're having a streak here in January. January is apparently spend all your Christmas money on deluxe products, because we had last episode we had the Beetle and Grem people on, where they were the high dollar D&D stuff, and here you guys, one of the things you had shown coming up is you got this nice $300 crate.
Yep.
Of the Book of Nod Deluxe Artifact Edition. Like I've seen a tablet in there. Is that supposed to be a stone tablet?
Yeah, I actually have it. It's right here. I just got my actual copy and everything. So we got this. It's not quite the same as what that concept art was, but we've got a giant sort of stone cast tablet. This vampire skull. Basically, that version is sort of like the little tiny book deconstructed into a huge pile of props that you can use in your game if you want to use that material.
Right. And I mean, some people might be like, why would I spend that much money on it? And it's like, well, clearly you don't know vampire fans.
It's like, you don't have to.
Right.
And we actually, in order to get all the stuff in there, one of the directions I had was we can't have new content that is unavailable to people who don't buy the $300 crate, because no one really wanted cool new stuff that was kind of behind a $300
right,
limited
like a paywall.
Yeah, it's like a paywall. So we have another sort of a new PDF. It's like a little 40-page thing that kind of compiles a lot of the information that was in this in the giant deluxe crate, so that fans can easily sort of reference some of that material. Because some of it's done in old, like, imitation styles, like a medieval manuscript page or something.
Right. Is that this of those who serve text thing that's here?
Yeah, there's all sorts of sort of manuscript pages or scrolls that got we put them together so that you can use them as like props in your game.
Nice. What was your favorite bit about putting all these different components together?
So besides the vampire skull, which oh no, something's falling. Besides the vampire skull, which I got to get designed, one of them, ooh, it can even survive a fall. Nice. There's some weird little art pieces in that book, and so we got this kind of weird little statue created. To represent that, but one of my favorites is just this sort of simple and dumb rubber stamp.
Nice.
Because wherever it went.
That's the symbol that's both on the crate and on the front of the original book, right?
Yeah, and because there's a bunch of proverbs in that book, like 24-ish. We got them. We wanted to put them in the crate somehow, so they ended up like this note cards. So like there's a story to the crate. The old vampire who's compiling all these texts from all the different sources he could find. He's like compiled all these proverbs, and we've got sort of the Book of Nod stamp on the cards themselves, but only if you look close. Ones that he sort of declared were authentic, and the ones that don't have it then are like inauthentic. But if you're paying all this money for cool props, being able to kind of make up some of your own felt really cool.
Yeah, and there's even like a story behind the crate as well to kind of you could theme a whole adventure around it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Scheherazaded together, right? That the Book of Nod is like it's an RPG kind of. It's not really a rule book, but it's an RPG accessory, I guess. And within it, there's the story of the myth of the first vampire, and then surrounding that, there's also this story of this vampire scholar who finds all the old texts, decides what's authentic and what's not, kind of puts it all together. And then he's supposed to get like 200 copies of his version put together for his closest friends, but it gets stolen, and that's why like it's out in the world. Is some other rival vampire just published all of it because they thought it needed to be out there for everyone.
And that story was Twilight.
Oh God.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. But okay, so. I'm gonna focus. I just caveat: if we focus a lot on World of Darkness, that's because that's where most of the limited bit of experience in the RPGs. I've read like the Transformers RPG, and that's about it as far as the Hasbro side of the RPGs. But and just a caveat: I never played the older World of Darkness games, but I knew about them. It was actually funny. When I was in high school, freshman year, there was a. Why are you looking? Sorry, my wife's just like giving me goofy faces. Freshman year at lunch, there used to be a table that would play the White Wolf games, and it was like they just like because when you're in high school, you just throw everything together. So it was whatever character you wanted to make, that was the book that you bought, and that was the character sheet. So there was like vampires and werewolves and mages and stuff all mixed together. And I was like, oh, cool, I want to be at that table. And then I went on the computer one day to print out some of the sheets, and my parents saw it, and they're like, that's demonic. You can't do that. So, but yeah, I just speaking of the RPGs, I just happen to have the Werewolf, the new core book.
Nice.
Just finished reading through it myself. But World of Darkness is very, especially it's a complicated game system because it's very different than like a D&D straight like all about combat and all about just like kill stuff, get experience, whatever. But even like as we were talking about kind of in the emails back and forth, it's very difficult. Even it seems like in the publishing arm as well because it's a property, but so Renegade does some of the stuff, but not all of it as far as writing it. Can you talk about like kind of where that distinction lies?
Yeah, it's basically in your hands right there. The core book, and I don't think this is a secret, it'll get me fired. The credits in the core book will show that it's basically the team at Paradox puts together like that core werewolf book. I didn't really have anything to do with it. And then every supplement that comes after that book, that is what Renegade is largely responsible for.
Gotcha. That's what I had thought, but based on some of the products and stuff. So they set it out, and then you get to kind of build out the world. So that I guess that kind of makes it more fun in a sense for you because you don't have to worry about the stress of like figuring out all the detailed mechanics. You just get to kind of play in the sandbox and just make it work.
Yeah, in a sense. There's a lot of things that like have been established in the core book, and I get to run with it. So I don't have to agonize to some extent about whether something is too edgy or not edgy enough.
Wait, people have that conversation with? There's a too edgy with World of Darkness.
There's definitely there are a lot of fans that have this is where I need the marketing people to tell me exactly what to say. There's a lot of fans that have strong opinions, strong attachments to the older version of the game.
Oh
There's a lot of
yes.
there's a lot of fans these days who want the game to kind of be the fantasy escape game for them. And when you're playing a tabletop RPG where the setting is basically the real world, usually it's the real world with monsters or magic or Cthulhu or something, right? But when it's largely a real world game, a lot of people don't want to deal with a lot of the BS that they have in their daily lives. So it makes sense that people want to avoid a lot of topics. And so with World of Darkness, kind of like just even how useful is a content warning on products like this? Like, it's a question that we ask ourselves, and every once in a while, we spot these articles where it's like, well, actually, these content warnings don't really do much for anyone. And then there's a lot of fans that will say, oh, I really appreciated this content warning on this story because it let me choose to skip it really easily or dive into it. Sometimes the content warnings aren't really warnings. It's just it's a sign that says this stuff is coming up.
Yeah.
And if you're playing a game like that, and I think a lot of us have when you've played RPGs for a long time, you don't necessarily think about it, but someone's got like in some of the games that I play, like someone has like an eyeball thing. Like, I'm okay with all the gore in the world, but keep it away from eyeballs.
Yeah.
Or I've got a friend who doesn't like zombies. So when we're playing D&D or something, you're just mentally, well, zombies turn into a skeleton or something else.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of little adjustments like that people have made for their own games. They don't think about it that much, and that's what we're trying to accomplish with some like content warnings and advice for session 0, because no one really wants a preachy role-playing game book. But World of Darkness has a complex subject matter, I guess you could say, and you want people to be able to enjoy the game and not be bogged down in elements of the game that could be perceived as promoting terrible ideas or things. Like, if you're playing a character with terrible ideas, that doesn't necessarily mean you espouse those, and we have to put them in, and ultimately someone at the table is playing that villain. Like, you can't play an Indiana Jones type of game without someone playing the Nazis that
Right.
you're fighting against, even if it is the storyteller, the dungeon master, or whatnot. We think about that probably too much sometimes. I'm sure some folks will say we don't think about that enough, but
Right. Yeah, it's man, if you know anything about like D&D and the edition wars that they've had, like that almost feels like pales in comparison to like people talking about World of Darkness and like the newer versions, and it's just I just want to be like, no one's taking away your okay, like I was like, oh, I prefer 20th anniversary edition. I'm like, cool, just play that.
yeah, it's still there. You can
There's
play it.
plenty of stuff for it. And I'm sure there are still discords or stuff where people are writing new books and materials for it. Like no one's going. People aren't going. It's like with some of the Warhammer stuff when people like complained when the old world got, or what was now the old world, but they're like burning their minis, and it's like nobody's coming to your house and taking that. Like,
yeah, you can still enjoy the book that's a few years old, and ultimately, if you don't like what's in how the core book is presented, like there's probably nothing I can do to make you like it.
yeah.
There's also a lot of people, I think, that just once you've invested so much time and energy into something, if it changes,
Yep.
you just get really disappointed. Like, well, you can still play it, but somehow it doesn't feel as authentic or enjoyable if you're not playing the newest version. I don't know. I say that as someone who played like a few years back. I played a second edition D&D game for like 2 years. And it was
that's
it
pretty
was a little
dope.
wild. You have to be the sort of person that is excited to like discover what this weird, quirky rule is in
Right.
order to enjoy it, potentially. But
Like THACO.
yeah, I was like, it's not really that complicated. And if you're playing online, it like all the math was done for you.
Right.
Roll20 did all the math for me. Like, I didn't think about it. It just easy to tell if you hit or miss. At the normal tabletop, I can see it being a little more confusing.
But yeah, that's why we have these tools these days. But yeah, that's I always it's like also people don't realize that like the people that enjoyed that are such a sub niche where it's like you can't tailor to just that. Like you have to kind of do new things to try and expand the hobby. Like clearly it wasn't that popular, or else it would be like super sailing, like I'm talking like the older or like 20th edition or whatever. But you know, it's like you have to kind of venture out and kind of try something new, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, hey, you know, that's what ask people about D&D 4th edition.
And one of the weird things that I've discovered is all the various online communities, you can kind of find the right one for you.
Yeah.
You might have to search a little bit, but if you think this like Facebook group is just the worst, maybe it is, and you'll be a lot happier leaving that group and joining something else, or looking at a different platform. Like TikTok's not for everyone, but there's a lot of weird content on there, and sometimes you can. Like,
There's a
if you wanna
subreddit
find
for
this
you.
you agree with- Yeah. Sometimes you have to look a little bit. Sometimes.
That one of the other things I've seen is it's also when my favorite last bit I'll talk about when we're talking edition wars. My other favorite thing is when I read older talking about this is when they all can't agree on the way things were, because like I know one of the big changes with the meta story and the gaming of with the Sabbat and Vampire was a lot. They're kind of like, of all the vampires, they've kind of the most evil. And in 5th edition, they're kind of presented. It even says on the front page, it's like, hey, this isn't about making these characters. This is a source book for villains for your game, antagonists for your game. And a lot of people are like, brah, we wanted to play Sabbat, and that's not fair that in this other game we were able to do this. And then people respond to them with like, well, actually, it's kind of like how, or it's very similar to the way the meta plot was in 1st edition.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that the 5th edition has tried to do, and I'm not sure if it's as successful as everyone would like, but some of that stuff like the Book of Nod, it was a cool thing in 1st edition that there's this vampire Bible out there. And then once the Sabbat were kind of made with a player's guide, so you could play as these characters that were before then just kind of the mysterious boogeymen, they kind of took the Book of Nod for themselves, and none of the other vampire then it became like something that all the other vampires didn't care about. So it was hard to kind of play your vampire character in a certain setting with the cameral of the sort of aristocracy of the knight in charge of your city. It was hard to do that and play a character who liked the Book of Nod. And now you can do that. So there's some pros and cons from a lot of points of views of how that works.
Awesome. Well, veering away from kind of the some vampire, one of the more recent pieces for the World of Darkness, aside from Werewolf, is we also had Hunter the Reckoning, which I had never heard. That always seemed like a weird piece to me because I had never really heard of Hunter other than like just maybe by name. Whereas everybody was expecting like Werewolf to be the second book that came out. But when I read it, I was just like, oh, this is just Supernatural, the RPG.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong. That one, I'm playing through a Hunter Chronicle right now, and it's surprisingly good. If you're interested in World of Darkness, it's really easy to get your friends to play that sort of game because you got that little pitch, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those sorts of you're just normal schmucks trying to correct something that's dangerously wrong in the world, and you can make a crazy grandma character. My character might be a former or an ex-Christian rock star. He wasn't much of a star, but he thought he was going to be.
He's the lead singer of Creed?
Basically.
But a reason I mentioned that is one of the things you guys have coming out soon is this the first source book for Hunter?
That is, the first source book. Our other book for Hunter is sort of a chronicle book with 4 different stories that you can play through. This one is more of a source book. So your storytellers will be able to take a look at this sort of world of universities and incorporate a lot of that stuff into your stories. I think it's really cool, in my mind at least, because not everyone has been to a college per se, but a lot of people have been to different sorts of schools. They have, from a lot of media, they've got ideas of what some of these different types of schools can be. And it really lets you tell that type of story focused around a university and broadens it. So sure, a group of college kids is a pretty obvious type of story you could tell, but you can also tell the story where someone is like the dean of students and someone is the janitor or a cafeteria worker or a groundskeeper. Someone may or may not be a student. Maybe the students are the enemies. You can do a lot of stuff with that setting, and this book should really let you kind of dive into that world, which is a little bit different than sort of your normal, regular, everyday world, unless you happen to be a college student currently or work in a college.
Right. Always got to have that caveat. Unless, you know.
It's a thing that a lot of people have that sort of cursory experience with, or maybe they spent 4 or more years of their life living that lifestyle.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Hopefully not that much, but it happens.
Yeah, and actually, it looks like, I mean, if you've never been interested in a game like Vampire, there's even, you guys, looks like, I'm just kind of cruising through the site here.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a bundle right now that's got $90 worth of, it's like $172 worth of stuff for Vampire for only $90.
Yeah, we're trying to make it easy for folks to be able to play.
Now, is that PDFs or are those actual physical products?
Oh, there's physical products in those bundles too.
Nice. Nice. And then I was just looking through here, there's a bunch of stuff. I love how the free RPG day was A Taste of the Moon, which happened to be the free RPG before Werewolf came out.
There's probably a reasoning behind that, right?
Yeah. One of the things that people get attracted to the most with the World of Darkness is there's always this like ongoing meta plot that kind of weaves in between a lot of the different games. And it's not like linked. It reminds me more of like TV shows that have spin-offs where like occasionally they have all their own independent stories, but occasionally they cross back over and then like veer off again. Where I was looking through when I was reading the Werewolf core rule book, and they mentioned there's there's a part, I believe it's in the FBI. It's the Federal or Special Affairs Division, right? Is that the FBI? Am I saying that right? But like,
it's like part of various. I think they might touch different government agencies.
Gotcha.
In the U.S. at least.
Right. But they're Special Affairs Division's like the division that tracks down mostly vampires and that sort of thing, and it features a lot. How I recognize this because I play a lot of the Vampire Rivals game, and it features a lot in there as antagonists you have to fight. But then like I'm reading in towards the very end where you're going through the Werewolf book, and then it's like Project Twilight, and it's apparently within this super secret organization there was this another super secret task force called Project Twilight that was apparently about hunting down werewolves that just mysteriously disappeared one day and nobody wants to talk about it. And I was like, ooh, That sounds that gives me all sorts of story possibilities.
I think you'll see a lot of those links happening more in some kind of background like areas
Yeah.
like that with the various agencies and organizations that are slowly joining forces and have kind of taken notice of some supernatural stuff going on in the world.
Right. That is one thing that I loved about the. Now I think not everybody liked it, but I constantly talk about my favorite thing to talk about in the Vampire is the beginning of the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition rulebook. Before you even get into any of the rules, before you get into anything, there's about 50 pages of just in universe like notes between this person and like stories or transcripts from like government agencies or whatever that just it tells so much of the story and just kind of gives you all these little pieces that just kind of set the scene for you of like, oh no, some of the vampires screwed up and now they made these organizations know that vampires exist. They left a trail digitally, and they've had to basically like scrub everything off the internet and everything. But it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I think one of the issues for me with Vampire was probably around 2008. Like once everyone's carrying high quality cameras in their pocket,
Yeah.
it does feel a little. It's harder to believe that there is a vast group of supernatural entities out there in our world, um, and I think you'll see that addressed in like obviously vampire and werewolf and hunter and anything that might be coming down the line as well. Although maybe we're also entering a new era of AI and deep fakes where for this
Right.
brief period of time, 10, 15 years, technology is like good enough to catch supernatural evidence, and then technology will be good enough to suppress all of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, but I would agree with you on some of that, except for we still have people out here making TikToks about flat Earth. So
Well,
there
you
could
can't win
easily
'em
be
all.
just a case of, people believe what they believe.
Hmm.
But I did like that was another piece of the werewolf is I forgot what it's called, but there's like a reaction that happens anytime like a human sees a werewolf. That kind of
Yeah, the delirium.
the delirium. Yes, thank you. That's what it's called. Where like it's a mechanical piece of the game is that basically when a human sees a werewolf, they just freak out and just completely lose all sense. Oh yeah, I see. Rusty
Beetle
Beat on the
says,
chat says,
Vampire, the dash cam.
but you wouldn't see them in the dash cam. That's the other thing.
You might. If you
You
do,
might.
then that's gonna be trouble.
Well, I guess it
Yeah.
depends on what part of vampire lore are we talking about. Like, do they appear in I forget in Vampire the Masquerade if vampires appear in mirrors and such.
Oh, most vampires will appear in mirrors. They, um, depending on which edition you're in, one of the clans, the La Sombra, didn't appear in mirrors. But
Mm,
it's kind of a weird thing because even in older editions of the game, there's sort of minor discrepancies. Like, is not having a reflection in a mirror in the Dark Ages such a big deal as it is in modern day?
right.
And then what counts as a mirror? Like, do digital photos count, because they don't have the sort of layer of silver or whatnot that traditional film used? Uh, Now they have a slightly different clan vein where I think it's just harder for technology to catch them when you want to, for them to use technology in a beneficial way, unless you use their alternate clan vein from the player's guide. And you kind of you do you.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was them. I thought there was like a clan where or technology just doesn't work around them.
Well, and in the new the fifth edition, the sort of a lot of vampires can't access some things like smartphones with your not living flesh. So without sort of forcing using up more of the precious blood that powers your
Right.
immortality. You can't actually necessarily use some of that technology these days without. I'm not sure if it actually entirely makes sense with the current technology that happens in the world, like, and who can keep track of what different types of touch screens and whatnot do. There's some people, I'm sure.
I mean, you say that, but my mother has to be very specific about the smartphones she used because she's got like low. I don't know if it's low blood pressure or just the fact that her hands are always so cold, and she has trouble touching or using touch phone screens sometimes.
I'm imagining the meeting of all the vampires when it's like, shit, they know about us now. Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks for not clearing your browser history. Now they know about us.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they don't all the people that know something about vampires don't talk, and they don't know what they all do. And because vampires can force more blood to sort of warm up their body, they can actually pass the cursory medical inspection, so you don't entirely seem dead. So there's some built-in options. Like, we even had discussions like, does that mean a vampire can pee in a cup to pass a drug test or something?
Well, yeah, because that was one of
be able to pass the cursory medical inspection.
I think that was one of the pieces in that 50 pages of lore is a government transcript that's them going through all the different pieces of vampire lore, and it's like, is this true? Is this true? Maybe more further investigation required or something like that. But sorry, now I'm thinking about drug tests and vampires. But I think what we've really learned here is that if you see someone still using a flip phone, vampire.
They're a vampire. Yeah, there we go.
They're texting with T9, definitely a vampire.
Oh, yeah. Although I've seen people...
T9.
What?
I could never get the hang of T9.
I never could either. And then you see the people that are super fast with it.
Yeah, it's like, you're a witch.
I just remember not bothering to correct the typos at some point. Instead of I'm on the bus, I just text my friend I'm on the cup. Done.
Yeah.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, it works.
Pretty much. So what else is in the pipeline now or coming out soon for World of Darkness?
For World of Darkness, what are the things I can mention? Stuff that we've already mentioned, the Hunter book Alma Maters, focusing on that sort of academic setting for friends. We've got a werewolf chronicle book called. Hang on, just double checking that I'm not mentioning stuff from my do not mention box. And it's only
see there.
Is it Scent of
Decay?
Decay?
Keep talking. We're just going to do a large bleep over everything you say. There we go.
Scent of Decay. That one
that's on the website, so I feel like that's good to talk about.
I'm working 2 projects ahead of this, so I do have to go back and consult my notes a little bit. So you can imagine we've got a couple projects for each of these lines in the works. Scent of Decay is going to be another one of these chronicle books, similar to the Hunter Lines Drawn in Blood. We're swapping out one of the stories for some other information on building a werewolf pack and some sort of what would you call them? Sort of drag and drop scenes, so that if you're a storyteller and you're struggling to get some of these scenes interacting with mostly sort of the mortal world, you can kind of add those to your werewolf chronicle. Fill up a little extra time if your scene is running short, or you're just well, I need something interesting to happen in this bar or in this park or wherever. Here, let's grab one of these and reuse and recycle it 3 times because players might not notice.
Yeah, it's like modular encounters.
A little bit, yeah. They're pretty short, but they just kind of give you some story ideas to not just necessarily to fill time, but to interact. Like werewolves, much like vampires, have touchstones, the sort of humans that kind of ground you in the real world and away from some of the supernatural stuff. Remind you that you're also part human. So some of those stories, especially for a new storyteller, those are some of the things that are very helpful to remember. It's not sort of the vampires, superheroes with fangs. You're still kind of grounded in the world, and you need to interact with it and remember that you are, in some sense, still human.
Because that's one of the, like, no matter if you're talking werewolf, hunter, or vampire, one of the first steps is the relationship map for
Yeah.
these games, where everybody talks about these touchstones and how they're related to each other. And every time I just think of the GIF with the Always Sunny with all the red lines everywhere, connecting everything. That's all I can think about with those types of, whenever I see those descriptions in the books.
But like running some of these games, that type of thing is super helpful to have. It doesn't have to be in a fancy map form all the time, but remembering in the World of Darkness, your characters are supposed to be or used to be human, just like us. So having some of those relationships and foibles and remembering to bring them up every once in a while, it is super fun. Like in this hunter game that I'm playing, one of the characters has like I think it was an ex-wife or maybe an ex-fiance, and just every once in a while we bring up Tracy and he gets really sad, and everyone has a lot of fun with that scene. Like he's always trying to figure out what he can do to win her back, which is ultimately probably going to be absolutely nothing, because World of Darkness has got some tragedy in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's probably the right attitude of pining over someone for years but protecting them from a distance from supernatural creatures that threaten them. But, does that make a good story? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Philip. It's
even,
like a D&D game with the seamstress, and
Yes.
like the random, the random character that you end up having a scene with, and ends up becoming something you talk about for. It's like the one thing you remember in that campaign.
Yep.
mhm.
Yep. That has influenced our Spelljammer campaign, because that was great grandma seamstress to my character.
Philip just makes the same character in every game, and it's just Althorn the second, Althorn the third.
You know where I got that from? You know where I got that
I
from.
know where he got that from. It was from
Okay, gotcha.
of Dice and Men.
Of Dice and Men.
Yeah, the movie.
Spango Garnet Killer the 17th.
So yeah, sorry, I stepped on you there a
No,
little bit.
that's fine. I think one of the hard things, or when I was playing this hunter game with people that never played hunter before, one of the hard things to grasp is that in the World of Darkness system, you might have another character as a stat on your character sheet. So you've got contacts, who are able to do things for you, but they also have kind of a personality to them that can get, add a lot to the story if it's not just my character has a bunch of cocaine or how much weed can I legally bring to or from Canada, like questions like that. But you actually have like a contact who can help you deal with that, so that and then like this guy becomes like your weed dealer or your usual bartender or the family priest. Like they become these characters that you actually get to interact with often, and some of the stats on your sheet are kind of negative things, but they get really fun to lean into because you've got an adversary or a stalker, or some sort of a mortal enemy, and they're the ones who, like, you put it on your sheet because you want that to come up in the game. You want to have a rival vampire that hates you, or some ex-lover who's been hunting you down because you slighted them, or whatever you want to have in the game. It's nice to have that relationship map, or at least some sort of a list as a storyteller to actually bring those things back, because it's what the players want to have in their game.
Right, and I mean, we were talking about like content warnings and that sort of thing, but another piece that I've seen in 5th edition World of Darkness, I have to specify so that we're not talking D&D 5th edition, but the Chronicle tenants that you see, where it's like, for those that don't know, Chronicle is like what a campaign is in the World of Darkness, as they're called, Chronicles. And specifically in Werewolf, like, Chronicle tenets are kind of like, these are the things that our characters value, or kind of like, but it's a little bit like that session 0 bits of this is where we kind of want to drive the story towards, and not so much these things like we don't want to hurt children, we don't want harming children to be in our games and that sort of thing. But specifically in Werewolf, there's like mechanical penalties to that, where like you can get in trouble if you start going against your chronicle tenets.
Yeah, it really helps you personalize the game. And in the older editions of Vampire, there was kind of this universal morality hierarchy of what makes you more or less human. And by kind of letting you customize that, it really opens the world up so you can play the type of game that you want to play. If you're playing as a bunch of like criminal gangs or something, you might really not have qualms about killing people, as long as they're not part of your group, or as long as they're not bystanders, right? Like, as long as you're killing the enemy, that's what you're gonna do. That's the story you're telling. But once you end up killing an innocent person, and I feel like you kind of see some of those scenes in movies or TV too, right? Where they're totally fine shooting their guns at everyone, but once this innocent person gets caught in the crossfire, that's when you have problems.
Right.
Let's see, tell stories like that.
What has been which of the so let's set it just so we don't get in any sort of get you into any sort of trouble outside of the 5th edition games. What's been your favorite World of Darkness game to play? Like, which of the different
Of all of them.
all of them?
I would say the one that I played the most outside of like Vampire, Werewolf, Hunter, played the most would be Changeling.
Okay.
We played a lot of that when I was in high school, and we tried to keep playing it, and then feel like we often like start and get a game or two in, and then it falls apart when someone moves away or whatnot.
Right.
Happens usually. Interested in, I thought that the demon, the Fallen, was an interesting idea. In the end of sort of the original World of Darkness, it felt a bit like a mix, like a mashup of Vampire and Changeling. So that would be appealing to me, liking both of those.
Right.
But I don't think we ever got that one on the table. And the Mummy, the Resurrection, was a weird one, but it was in part weird because you're actually the good guys. Even like Hunter, you're kind of ambiguously good because you're willing to do bad stuff.
Yeah.
To generally, or that's one of the.
It's like the means justify the ends justify the means.
Can you do that? Can you actually like just flat out murder this person who is like saying I have to drink blood and I don't want to, but blah blah blah, right? Mummy was kind of a weird one where you actually like, I don't know how it would play, but I just had this vision of playing a game where like, yeah, I'm running a soup kitchen. I'm like, I don't know what else is gonna happen, but that's what you do. And Wraith, we've played it a little bit, and I would definitely love to play that again, but it's not for everyone, and sometimes my ideas get a little dark. It's not for everyone. I don't know that they're like I don't have a group of people that would want to play that Wraith game with me.
Man, this is the thing about World of Darkness. There's so many of them. Like, I knew there was a lot, but like hearing like I didn't know there was a Mummy one, and I didn't know about like the demon one. Or there's like the side. It uses the same, like the Exalted, which it's not in the universe, but it's just like it uses the system, I think.
Yeah.
Or it's you play as gods.
Or some sort of demigods, like that. There was a lot of stuff, and it's hard to keep up on all of that.
Yeah.
Unless it was your lifestyle. There's also like so many other games. I need to try to play a bunch of other games for my job. Like we don't want to be left behind in certain things. Like I want to know what's going on with all these new competitors that are popping up all over the time.
Yeah, you got to stay up to date, and
yeah.
what is it? Good artists create, great artists steal.
I at least want to know what people are doing, what they're talking about. Like, why do people like some of these other things? Is, World of Darkness is a very particular brand. There's some stuff that fits in it. There's some stuff that won't. There's some stuff you might be able to kind of make fit, but ultimately, I've got a certain set of lines in my sandbox. I get to color within the lines.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can push back and say, like, are you really sure this is the line here and it's not over there? But
when you understand the property more than
yeah.
But to answer Rusted Beetle's question there, Changeling is not a current game. So right now the Renegade's World of Darkness games are just Vampire the Masquerade, Hunter the Reckoning, and Werewolf the Apocalypse. But I mean, the other version, there was the 20th edition for a lot of those. I think there was a Changeling one
there was a 20th anniversary Changeling. Yeah.
that a lot of people talk about, and you can still get those versions on Drive-Thru RPG. In fact, I think that's the only way to get them printed. I don't think they ever sold a physical copy other than just the print on demand from Drive-Thru RPG.
There was a real fancy, expensive edition with the original Kickstarter for some of those 20th anniversary ones.
Gotcha.
But yeah, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the World of Darkness stuff are in the 20th anniversary edition. The only way you could get it was through Drive-Thru RPG. You could only get the print-on-demand version. And it's really cool that we're getting a lot of this stuff out in stores now, so you can actually go to your local game store and peruse the vampire section, the growing werewolf and hunter section. Sorry, we got a cat here who's demanded attention. Dude, come on. Still talking to folks. But yeah, like, you can't get some of that stuff other than Drive-Thru RPG currently, and I'm super enthusiastic, like, to see, like, walk into my local game stores and see, do they have vampire, do they have werewolf, which of the things that I've worked on have actually shown up in stores so far.
Right, and it must be cool to be able to, like, I helped make that happen.
Yeah, like, one of the, I don't know if I have a copy somewhere, for Hunter, it was kind of a no-brainer for me, because for Hunter, you end up tracking the stats for your whole group. It's like the whole party, or the cell of hunters, has a desperation rating and a danger rating. And so I was like, why don't we do some tokens for this? Because it's kind of cool to have this, like, physical representation as you watch your danger or desperation grow. The storyteller can slap these extra tokens down on the table to make it a little more visceral or real. So that was one of the things that was my idea, we should get some things like that. Or with Werewolf, you're going to see there's a set of 5 cards in the dice set. And that's because I've played Werewolf before. People sometimes argue, like, oh, well, which shape were you in? Like,
Yes.
you weren't at the mall in your, like, 7-foot-tall war form or whatnot. So having that little physical representation for which shape which of their 5 forms that you're currently in, sitting right out in front of you so that no one can argue about it. Like, does everyone need them? No. Could I have put an extra die in the pack instead of 5 cards? Maybe. That's a decision I have to live with, and I'm reasonably happy to put those extra cards in there. A lot of people seem to think that they'll be useful, and as people are playing it more, hopefully it will prove to be useful for folks.
Rusty Beetle says, sounds like Hunter needs a Buffy crossover.
I don't think you need to do much to make that happen.
No, I know that would piss a lot of people off, because it's like, no, we have to have our self-contained thing, and we can't. You could run a Buffy game inside of it easily, but you wouldn't. I doubt that any official crossovers would be.
I wouldn't
welcome.
hold your breath. I wouldn't hold your breath for an official crossover, but there's sort of so much in the rules that really, those chronicle tenets.
Yeah.
You've gotta make those so that your, like, vampire character and your hunter character and your werewolf character would all that's an acceptable for your chronicle. and then as a storyteller, how vampires interact with or get away with breaking those tenets is different from hunters and werewolves. You're basically playing multiple games at that point in time. And I'm one of those people that would rather, if I'm playing a vampire game, I would like to focus on vampires and not necessarily have a bunch of werewolves or demons in my stories.
Now, one of the other things that just looking on the page of upcoming stuff is, like, for instance, in Werewolf, you've got the character sheet journals. This seems to be like a really popular thing, and I almost feel like Renegade is part of that. Either jumped on the trend early or helped drive that trend, because it feels like almost immediately after a new core book is released, you'll see like a character journal type thing for it. So I just wanted to ask, like, where did the thinking behind those products come from, and like why has it become such a big mainstay thing, or do you think?
That one, we started those at Renegade before my time, so I can't take all the credit for that. But I think there's kind of two issues. One of them is when you're playing at the table, being able to have sort of your character sheet and your notes all in one place is super useful. And I know I've definitely done this where I've made it like you drove 25 minutes to get to your friend's house or whatnot, and you're like, well, I don't have my character sheet with me. What do I do now? So it's kind of a troublesome point, but it's really cool. I've been playing this hunter game, like I said. I picked up a copy of that journal for everyone, and everyone is like spot on taking notes. When one person's in a scene, some other people are taking a couple notes. Like, it's super cool going back to like recap the previous session, remembering what the notes that you took, like what actually happened. It makes that a little more interactive and easy when everyone's taking notes, instead of the burden being on like the game master or storyteller to recap what happened 3 weeks ago when we played last time, or 2 months ago sometimes. And I think a lot of people like having, there's kind of a solo RPG, a growing solo RPG industry, which is mostly journal based.
Yep.
And I think these kind of satisfy some of those same things. Like, there's prompts in there to help develop your backstory. What do you think about these? What were your early days like? What were you like after you changed or were embraced, or were understood that there's supernatural stuff out there? How do you interact with these other characters at the table? And most of them, we really tried to get those various journaling sort of prompts synced up with a lot of the rules elements, so that it makes sense why you would want to keep notes on the quarries that you killed. Or in Hunter, when you've fallen to despair, it's one of the mechanics in the game. When you try to do something, you're really desperate, you overreach, and then you've fallen into despair, and you need to get a win before you can get back up into the fight, kind of. And tracking some of those in different places, or that relationship map. It's really cool, and it's nice to have that all in one place. You certainly don't need it at all, but it's one of those things. I'm curious when we need to reprint it. It's my mind like, should we revise this? How are people actually using these things? It would be interesting to get some feedback on those, and I'll probably have to get our marketing folks involved in doing that soon.
Yeah, it's like in Chaz, I keep my character sheets, notes, and narratives on Drive and share it with the DM. I mean, yeah, that's it. It's a different dichotomy where, if you do more digital gaming, or you're just more into it than that, but there are a lot of people that are like, I don't want any screens in my games. So, but like, yeah, I did the same thing I had my tablet and OneDrive, and I would just take notes and like write down like a narrative kind of what happened on my tablet, and then then you could be like, oh, what happened last time, and then just read from that instead of the DM doing it. And then it was even funner because I would write it in character, so then it's like, it's not just a here's what happened, it's here's what happened from the viewpoint of my character.
Mm-hmm. And I've done things like that too, even with World of Darkness games or whatnot. Ask people, like, you can submit type up your notes as like a journal entry, and it's not always a journal. Sometimes it's a letter to some other character in the game, and if you want to get like extra involved, you can like respond to those. Like that idea actually made it into our Bloodstained Love, the vampire romance book, where you can, if you're okay dealing with some of these concepts with your characters, but just not okay doing it at the table, you can have your romance in that sort of asynchronous written way. And then you've got this nice record of the whole chronicle or campaign that you've done, and you can go back and look at things. And even for some of those games where you think it's fallen apart, but you can get the group back together and do like a Christmas sort of that week between Christmas or New Year's Day, where everyone's got off. Like you can get that game in a couple times a year maybe, and you've got that record, you've got the notes right there. You're not missing out on as much as you might think coming back to it after 3 months or 12 months or more.
Awesome. Well, I think that's probably probably all the questions that I can come up with. Without getting into the I can't until we start getting the questions of we cannot respond to unannounced products. I feel like that's where we're going to get to. So if people want to keep up with the latest and greatest that's coming out for all of the Renegade RPGs, where's the best place?
Oh man, I should have had this all prepared. The best place is probably like joining the Renegade Discord server. That's where you'll get lots of updates. You can get them in your email too, if you want to. At our web store, we'll email you stuff. Unless you click the box that says "Don't email us," and then we have problems. People are like, "Oh, we didn't get these emails about the Book of None." It's like the box.
You didn't want it.
You didn't click the box.
I can't do anything about it if the box isn't checked. Like we're not contacting you depending on the state of that box.
That sounds like a you problem.
The Discord is a great place, and for World of Darkness things too. The World of Darkness Discord will get you a lot of information, updates. They've got the almost weekly World of Darkness news. You can get a lot of updates there.
And I will say, one of the I imagine this came out of the pandemic, but one of the things that I feel like Renegade has done really well are the Renegade cons that y'all put on. Is there a schedule to them, or I forget?
If there is a very specific schedule to exactly when they will come in the future, I'm not sure, but I know the next one is going to be, I'm going to say March 1st, and there's a 10% chance it's slightly earlier or later, but I'm pretty sure it's March 1st.
But it's usually like once per quarter, or at least like twice a year kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there'll be one here where we're going to announce a lot of stuff in March, and then another time or two later in the year we'll probably do others. Jordan's in charge of those. I don't.
Yeah.
I only show up when I show up when they ask me to come up on the video.
But I mean, it's great because like, of course, there's always like the big streams of like interviews with people, but there's always like a big push for RPGs, and you get that kind of Gen Con experience of, well, I don't have a group to run. Like for instance, one of the first ones, myself and a couple of our friends, we play Kids on Bikes, because it was like, well, we had heard of this. I'd backed the Kickstarter for it, and it had just been sitting on my shelf. And it's like, well, we probably can't get like a whole group together, but or it's like we don't know enough to sell the group on it. And it's just like, I just want to try this game out. And there's a GM there that's willing to run it, and just, again, you get the things like Gen Con where you're having to deal with random other people, but at the same time, you don't have to do the effort of like getting a group together. You just have to like, I'm free this night and that. So if you want to, like, the rest of the people in the chat was talking about wanting to try the G.I. Joe RPG. All you got to do is jump in and be like, I want to play G.I. Joe at this time, and then show up on Discord and ready to go.
Yeah, it's really nice there, and there's actually, especially with the Hasbro games, there's a lot of people that have been interested in RPGs, but like D&D or whatnot just wasn't their thing. But once there's a Power Rangers RPG, people are like, I'm listening. How do we make this happen?
Right.
And we've actually, one of the things we've noticed is we in some of the core rulebooks, like we may have made a couple too many assumptions. Like people are asking questions like, what is this milestone level up? And maybe that's like, maybe it wasn't that clear in the rulebook, but people just have certain expectations from a minimal amount of D&D or watching Critical Role and other streams, and but there's a lot of people that are at your experience level, whatever that is, looking to play these games and try them out because they're just huge fans of Joe or Power Rangers or My Little Pony, Transformers. Mention them all.
All right. Well, I'm going to play that beautiful beam footage here.
That's been our show, everybody. We want to thank Kevin for joining us and putting up with our shenanigans. We've got links. If you love what we're doing, you got to check out boardsandswords.com. It's got links to everything that we've done in the past. It's got a calendar for what we're going to do in the future, maybe. Also, check out patreon.com/boardsandswords and help us put on a better product for you.
All right. We love feedback. And before I get too much further, Kevin, if people wanted to get into that Discord you're talking about, I'm assuming that's on the Renegade Games website.
That is a good question. I never have to go there myself.
But send us feedback. We love it. Feedback at boardsandswords.com. Also on Facebook at Boards and Swords Pod. Boards and Swords Chris on Instagram. But feedback, you know what? I think I'm in the Discord. I'll post a link in the in the description for.
You go to renegadegamestudios.com. Go all the way at the bottom. There's a Discord button.
There you go. For us, boardsandswords.com it links to everything. It's got the Discord link. It's got the Patreon. Philip mentioned the calendar. Check it out. Help support the show. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another story, with another show. I think we have the person from Fanroll Dice and Metallic Dice Games. They're going to be on the show talking to us some more dice talk. Can't get enough dice. So in the meantime, remember that every gamer has a story, and you're the storyteller of your own game, which is a nod to World of Darkness because they're not called game masters, they're called storytellers. I had to explain that one. I was like, that just sounded too profound on its own.
Yeah, you should have left it at that, man.
It's too professional for this show. I had to bring it back down to our expectations. All right, I always forget about it just drops right at the end. It doesn't keep fading out, it just drops. So, awesome. So, I thank you. Thanks, Kevin, for being on the show. And I'm going to wrap things up here to say thanks, y'all, for being in the chat room. We love y'all. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the show. Good night, everybody. As soon as I get my mouse down here.